Here we are, take 2 of trying to fucking film this. So I filmed a whole video on this topic, and then I realised that I didn't much care for it. So I'm re-recording it because I kind of wanted to get this one right. So this is the second video in our beginner basics deer hunting little mini series thingy doodle, whatever you want to call it. This video may be a little bit long. There is a lot to get through. One of the reasons why I had to re-film this video is because I didn't have any talking notes and I sort of was just going on weird tangents, and it was a little bit higgledy-piggledy. You want to pick your first rifle for deer hunting. Before anything else you need to answer this one question. What style of hunting are you going to be undertaking? Because what you pick as your style is going to dictate what weapon is best suited for that. There is no one weapon is the best for everything. When we talk about deer hunting, there are a lot of different styles, but these are the 3 most predominant ones in Australia, being stalking, long range, and hound hunting / driven hunting. Let's talk about the first one, stalking. This is primarily what I do. Stalking is where you are sneaking up on an animal. You're getting in nice and close and you're putting on a close shot. It's usually under 100 meters. Typically, you want to stalk up onto an animal as it's moving to and from its area, or it's bedded and you're trying to get it to stand up out of its bed so you can place a shot on it. So that's stalking. We have long range, where long range can sort of incorporate a few different things, where you can spot and stalk, so you can spot an animal on an opposing face, 1,000 meters away or whatever, and then you can go and stalk it. So that's sort of incorporating the both. But primarily when I talk about long range, I talk about long range shooting. So engagements that are plus of, I would say, 400 or 500 meters up to 1,200, whatever. That would be what I would classify as long range shooting. And then we have hound hunting, which is probably the most popular, I dare say, most popular method. Maybe it's not, maybe stalking is, but it's pretty bloody popular. You see it in all the magazines and a lot of people do it. Hound hunting, if you don't know, is where you would set a group of dogs onto a scent trail and they would chase the deer and bail them up so the deer won't be moving, it'll be static, and then you can come along and then you can shoot the deer. Or while the deer is being flushed out of its position by the dogs, it would be coming past you and then you would shoot it, being the driven component of that type of hunting. So there are 3 styles. Once you've decided which style of hunting is going to be your style, you can then think about the weapon. But before you think about the weapon, again, we've got another question you want to ask, is what caliber do you want to use? Now, I would say pick your caliber before picking your weapon, as opposed to going, oh, that one looks nice, and then trying to find it in the caliber that you want. Let's first talk about pistol versus centerfire rifle cartridges, because people, for some reason, don't really know the difference. Pistol cartridges, as inferred by the name, are fired out of pistols, although they can be fired out of rifles. So they're generally short, they're generally straight-walled, and they're generally of a wide caliber. So for instance, you probably all would have heard of a 44 Magnum, the Dirty Harry gun. This cart case here, I'm going to hold up, that is the cart case of a 44 Magnum. Now that is quite small. Everyone knows though, oh, 44 Magnum, that's got heaps of punching power, that's the most powerful handgun in the world. And I have heard of people using them to hunt deer. Doable, 100% doable, however, relatively close range. I would say anything under about 50 meters if we want to talk about the ethical taking of a game animal. So there is a general rule of 1,500 joules of energy to be able to ethically and humanely dispatch an animal with one shot. That's the general rule that we're going to play with when we talk about our calibers. Now, obviously, you don't need that many joules to kill something, and if you've watched my other caliber videos, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's just a general rule for a quick kill and an ethical kill. So that's a pistol caliber. We have another pistol caliber here, which is actually slightly bigger, being a 45 Long Colt. That's been used a fair bit in America for taking deer, but their deer, especially white-tailed deer, are a hell of a lot smaller than a Sambar deer. While we're on the topic of how big fucking Sambar are, so this actually catches people off guard because they see American stuff and they're like, oh yeah, deer. It's like a small little thing with fucking antlers. Sambar deer are the third biggest deer in the world. So you have moose, then elk is the second, and sambar is the third. They're generally around 180 kilos and up. They're pretty fucking big. We need a fair amount of energy to be able to dispatch that big motherfucker ethically. So let's talk about our centerfire rifle cartridges. They generally have a smaller caliber, but the cart case itself is bigger, holding more propellant, therefore fires it faster. Here's some of the calibers that I would recommend for your first rifle. So in no particular order, 308, and I'll throw in 30-06 with that as well. So this here is a 308 round. Now this here is no bullet in it, but that's the cartridge case for a 30-06. The 308 was somewhat designed off the 30-06. 30-06 has been around for a while. The 06 in it being the year. 30 caliber of 1906, 30-06, or if you're American, AUT-6, which itself was developed off the 30-03 cartridge, 30 caliber of 1903. And then 308, not exactly 100%, but you know, it came off like I think it was the 300 Savage and a few other different cartridges and the 30-06, and they sort of took different things from different things and made the 308 cartridge. When you look at firing the same weighted bullet, so let's say 150 grain 308 bullet, they both fire the exact same bullet. The difference between the 30-06 and the 308 are very, very marginal. You don't get that much more energy out of a 30-06. I've got ballistic tables up on the website, link in the description. Hit that, have a look, and you'll see that there's not actually much difference. The benefit of a 30-06 over a 308 would be that you can fire heavier bullets than what you can in a 308. The heaviest you would generally go is about 180 grains. Out of a 30-06, you would be pushing, 220s. I think that would be upper limit, but you can push heavier bullets because you have more powder space in your cartridge to push those out. But generally, I would group them as being pretty much the same thing, but you're paying more money to buy 30-06. So if it's your first rifle, probably just go 308 if you're looking at those two comparatively. We have 30-30, which is this little bad boy here, comparatively against 308. It's not that much different, but the pressures are a hell of a lot different. You get way less pressure out of a 30-30 than you do out of a 30-06. 30-30, the name being 30 caliber with 30 grains of smokeless propellant, is originally how they got the name. Has been used to take deer for a long time in America, but once again, that's usually whitetails, which are a hell of a lot smaller than sambar. I've killed sambar with a 30-30, 100% doable, but you have to know your limitations. You would generally not be using it anything plus of 100 meters, but then that would lead into the type of rifle you're using and the type of hunting you are using it for. Then we have 270. So remember when I said that we have the 30-06, which was based off the 30-03? So if you branch that down, the brother cartridge to the 30-06 would be the 270. It's a 30-03 cartridge, which has been necked down to 270, which is the minimum caliber in Victoria for hunting large deer, being your sambar and the like. 270, if you were to convert that into metric, is 6.8 millimeters. If you're thinking you can use a 6.5 for deer in Victoria, you are sorely mistaken. You cannot. You are 3 millimeters too small. The good thing with 270, the reason why it's been so popular across the world for deer hunting and for hunting pretty much any game for that matter, is because it has such a relatively large casing with a small projectile. It pushes that projectile a hell of a lot faster, which gives you more kinetic energy downrange, and it's flatter shooting, therefore you don't have to conduct as many aim-offs for the distance you're hunting. So you wouldn't actually have to do any aim-offs because it would fly that flat that you would hit the vital zone if you just aimed on. 270 is still well renowned today for sambar, so you can definitely look into using a 270. We mentioned 6.5, so we'll talk about those while we're here. You can use 6.5 for deer that are smaller, so fallow, chital, and hog. This is Victoria I'm talking about. It will probably change in your state. Look up your own legislation. Things may be different. You may be able to use a 6.5 for larger deer, who knows. Across the world, 6.5 is used to take very big game, even moose. So we have 6.5 Swede, which is this caliber, or this cartridge here. And the Swedes use this to kill moose all the time. It's very, very popular in Sweden, hence the name. 6.5 Swede. The actual name for it though is 6.5 by 55. and then Swede is just tacked on the end there because, you know, Americans with their geography, not that great. Then you have 6.5 Creedmoor, which is essentially a 308. That's the comparison there. Essentially a 308, neck down to 6.5. There's a few little differences there, but it's not, you know, I'm not going to go too far into the weeds on that. Depending on what your state says, you know, if you're only hunting fallow in Victoria, then yeah, fuck yeah, go 6.5. Why not? It's a hell of a cartridge. All right, and that sort of covers off our standard length action cartridges. We then step up into the realms of our Magnum cartridges. Now, Magnum cartridges are very, very, very popular for hunting deer because it still goes back to that old school thing of you want your really flat shooting rounds so that you don't have to apply aim-offs and stuff like that out to the distance you would be hunting. But now, because, you know, we have LRFs and we have you know, bullet drop compensators in our reticles and stuff like that, it's not really that much of a drama. You can use lighter hitting rounds because you can now apply the aim-offs. But they've still retained their popularity because it now means you can carry kinetic energy further. So that would lead into your long range hunting. So we have a couple here. We have 7mm Rem Mag, which is this big boy here. So these next couple actually all have the same cart case, just with different projectiles. So we have 7mm Rem Mag and 300 Win Mag. They came out within a year of each other, direct competitors. They are both very cool cartridges. They're both parented by a cartridge that's called the 375 H&H, or Holland & Holland, which is a gun making company in London. This round itself became very popular in the early 1900s as being a very capable safari cartridge used for dangerous game, being your lions, Cape buffalo, elephants, you know, giraffes, rhinoceros, hippopotamus, all those big fucking African things. And it's essentially a 9mm round in a big fucking rifle cart case. So a big bullet pushing very fast, a lot of kinetic energy. Then someone took it and they've necked it down. 300, I believe, was first, and then 7mm was next. Or was it? No, actually, no, it was the other way around. 7mm happened first, and then 300. Doesn't really matter. What we're getting out of it, though, is a big cart case with a small pill, so we're going very, very fast. To put that into perspective, our 7mm Rem Mag and our 308 cartridge. So look at the size difference there. Bit ridiculous. This particular 308, this is a Aussie Outback 165 grain with a Sierra Game King bullet. That is punching out with a muzzle velocity of about 2840 feet per second. So that's fair hoofing. The 7mm Rem Mag, it's a 162 grain, so pretty much the same weight, just a slightly different caliber. This one is pushing it out at 3030 feet per second. So a hell of a lot faster than the 308. That obviously carries its energy for a lot further. You can have terminal effect further out at longer distances. We then have a couple of other rounds that sort of pop their heads up here and there throughout the hunting community. One being 9.3 by 62, which is a German round, so it's a 9.3mm bullet in a 62mm cart case, so a fairly long cart case. Punches out a fair bit of energy. It's sort of like the 375 H&H from Wish. No, it's probably not that bad, but it's, you know, it's this comparatively a similar sized bullet, but going a little bit slower. And every now and again you'll see 35 Whelen, 35 Whalen, however the fuck you say that, will pop its head up. Now it's 35 caliber, so it's almost 9mm, not quite, but that's fired out of the same cart case as the 3006. A big cart case, big bullet, can punch out a fair bit of energy, but these big bullets don't carry the energy that far because they've got a lower ballistic coefficient, so it means drag is affecting the bullet more. They'll drop quicker, which means their trajectory will, you know, drop like that. So they're generally used for shorter range shooting. So we're talking about, like, you know, 300 and under. So there's our cartridges. That's probably a lot to take in. Out of all that, pick one you like. 3 of these calibers on the table I deer hunt with. I hunt with 30-30, 308, and 7mm Rem Mag that are used for a different application. So when we do full circle and we come back to the conclusion of the video, keep that in mind. All right, so now that we're probably about halfway through the video, I'm just going to throw in a little advert for you. Not really an advert, but I don't make money off making YouTube videos. I do this because I like to share information. I like to help people learn. However, you know, I need to get a little bit of revenue going so I can keep this whole thing afloat. So, you may see I'm wearing a sweet long tee here that says Ballistics, Maths and Science for Blokes. Quite fitting that I'm throwing it in after I just talked for about 5 to 10 minutes about fucking cartridges. They're available on the website, link in the description, please. You don't have to buy one of these, but you can buy one of the other shirts or a sticker or something to help me keep this going. If you're liking the content, also hit subscribe. All right, so we're back from that garbage. Let's move on now with the action of our weapon. There are 4 actions we are going to talk about for your first deer hunting rifle. First one is the standard, which is bolt action. We then have pump action, lever action, and straight pull. This goes hand in hand with your cartridge. There are certain actions that lead themselves better to certain cartridges, and there are certain actions that can only fire certain cartridges, and we'll delve into that now. So bolt action, literally the standard, normal, you get a kid to draw a gun, they're probably going to draw a bolt action. You can fire literally any cartridge out of a bolt action. There is even a company out there that makes 30-30 bolt action rifles, which is, you know, something that's typically fired out of a lever action. If you've picked any cartridge, you're like, I want to fire that cartridge. Whatever cartridge it is, you will find a bolt action rifle that fires it. The good thing about bolt actions is they are very, very accurate. They're very easy to operate. Like, you don't have to be very smart to operate a bolt action. Easy to keep clean. It's just the standard. If you're going to buy a rifle for your first one, I would probably say make it a bolt action. The next one we'll talk about is pump action. Pump action is generally used for stuff that's up and close and you need to fire quickly. Pretty much the only reason why you would get a pump action is you want to be able to bust your rounds out fairly quickly. Obviously not as quick as, you know, a fucking semi-auto, but, you know, we can't have those anyway, so who gives a fuck? So things like stalking, your hound hunting, that's where you're going to be looking for a pump action. You can get pump actions, particularly like Remington 7600s in, you know, 308, 3006, 270. You can get them in 35 Wheeling. You can get them in a lot of different calibers. Lever action, I would put in the same vein. I use a lever action for when I'm hunting with my dog, when I'm up nice and close, and just stalking by myself. Sometimes I'll use a lever action depending on how close the terrain is. So I'm going somewhere that's really, really thick, I'll just take my lever action because it's very short, really maneuverable. And then you have straight pull. Now, straight pull is a bit of a weird one. It's very popular in Europe, not so much here. One of the reasons why they're not so popular is because to get a rifle to fire a centerfire cartridge that's straight pull, it has to have an intricate lockup on the bolt to be able to withstand the pressures of firing centerfire cartridges. And to do that, the rifles are generally expensive and usually European made. So you've got your Blaser R8s, you've got your Heim SR25, SR30s, whatever the fuck that model is. Your Miracles. Miracle? Is that what I said? Miracle? So all these rifles are fucking expensive and you definitely can't afford one if it's your first rifle. But then you've got, you know, new things that are just coming out like the Savage Impulse, which is a hell of a lot cheaper. I think they're about $2,000. Please buy me one. So there are your 4 actions. So what do you want? Do you want a bolt action, a pump action, a lever action, or a straight pull? I would say if you're doing long range or stalking, probably go a bolt action. If you're doing hound hunting, probably go a pump or a lever. And if you, for some reason, are in Germany doing a driven hunt, get a straight pull. Which will lead me on to barrel lengths. We have the action for the rifle, we have the cartridge you've picked. Let's just say you've picked a 308. You've got the action you've picked, a bolt action. Now we're going to talk about barrel length. So your general barrel lengths are going to be 16, 18, 20, 22, and 24, all obviously in inches. Now, if you're doing long range shooting, go for something that's like 22 or 24 inch, because you need that extra barrel length to give you a little bit more accuracy. It also gives you a little bit more velocity to be able to carry that kinetic energy further down range. If you're doing anything that's relatively close, and by relatively I mean anything under 500 meters, you don't have to have a very long rifle. That's a bit of a old school, no, you need the longest rifle ever. And you know where that comes from? Muskets. They had like 32-inch barrels because it had no rifling and it was a fucking 62 caliber ball. All right, you needed a longer barrel to get it more accurate. We've got very accurate rifles these days. You don't have to have long barrels for accuracy for things of the size that you're going to be shooting. You're not shooting ping pong balls at 1,000 meters. You're shooting a fucking deer with a 10-inch kill zone at 300 meters, all right? having a 16-inch barrel is not going to make you inaccurate. The barrel length is going to be dictated by how you're going to use it. If it's a stalking rifle and you're in very thick terrain, go with a shorter barrel. So my lever action Marlin is a 16-inch barrel, or 16.25-inch barrel, whatever it is. My 308 Remington Jackaroo is also a 16-inch barrel because I use that in very close terrain, and it's easier to get that around big sticks and fucking all that sort of shit. But then I have a 7mm Rem mag in a 24-inch barrel for when I'm doing longer shooting, because, you know, I'm not carrying that around the bush in real thick shit. I'm sort of sitting on a hill and sending rounds a fair distance. So yeah, stalking and hound hunting, I would say anything between 16 and 20 inches, 20 inches being the upper end. You don't really want to go anything longer than that. And as I said before, if you're doing long range sort of stuff, 22 to 24. So, in conclusion, I've mentioned all of these different things and you're probably now going, I know less than what I did before I watched this fucking idiot's video. I'll break it down once again in a little concluding piece. If you're doing stalking, something short, something light, I would say, you know, in a 308 or so. The reason being, you know, 30-06 and definitely all the Magnum cartridges are going to give you a hell of a lot more recoil in your shoulder, especially when you have a shorter barrel. The shorter your barrel is, the more recoil you're going to feel. So go for a medium recoiling rifle cartridge like 308. If you're doing long range shooting, you want something with a longer barrel because you want to be able to retain some kinetic energy at longer ranges. You want to be able to push that bullet at a faster velocity. Generally, you would want to have that in a Magnum cartridge for that kinetic energy reason. And you're going to want to have a big optic on it. The next video, if you stay tuned to this little series, is going to be on picking an optic for your rifle. Now, if we're doing hand hunting, you know, you want something with a fast action, so a lever action or a pump where it's very quick to get the next round in, because you may have to put a couple of rounds into that animal to drop it, or, you know, you may have multiple animals that you need to drop. That's been a lot to take in. That's been a lot for me to spew out. As I said, this is the second time I've had to film this video because I really wanted to get a lot of these points across in the most succinct manner I could without confusing people. The first time I filmed this, I confused myself when I tried to edit. I was like, that doesn't even make sense. Ed, what are you talking about? You're a fucking idiot. Hopefully you got something out of that. Subscribe and follow along if you want to learn about how to pair your optic with your first deer hunting rifle, and that will be in the next video. Until then, hooray.